Hey everyone, and welcome back to your channel name. Before we dive into today's story, if you love thrilling narratives that explore the hidden corners of human experience, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what we have in store. Your support means the world and allows us to keep bringing these stories to you. Now, settle in, because what we're about to unfold is a journey into the shadows of a seemingly perfect family. It's a story about the secrets we keep and the silent battles fought where no one can see. This is Behind Closed Doors, a sister's silent nightmare. The screen fades to black, and the story begins. Chapter 1. The gilded cage. The scent of lemon polish and freshly cut roses hung heavy in the air of the Sterling household, a fragrant testament to the pristine order that governed their lives. From the outside, the two-story colonial, with its perfectly manicured lawn and gleaming white shutters, was the very picture of suburban bliss. Inside, the illusion was meticulously maintained. This was the world 17-year-old Maya knew, a world of polished surfaces and unspoken rules. Her older sister, Clara, was the architect of this perfection. At 24, Clara was everything Maya was not: poised, confident, and effortlessly graceful. She had returned home a year ago after completing her master's degree, a triumphant daughter ready to take her place in the family's lucrative interior design business. Their parents, Richard and Eleanor Sterling, viewed Clara's return as the final, perfect piece in their carefully constructed family portrait. Maya, by contrast, often felt like an unfinished sketch, her lines messy and her colors uncertain. She was a creature of quiet corners and dog-eared books, her passions more academic than aesthetic. While Clara could command a room with a single, dazzling smile, Maya preferred to observe from the periphery, her sketchbook her only constant companion. This particular Tuesday afternoon was no different. Sunlight streamed through the large bay window in the living room, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air like tiny, golden sprites. Maya was curled up in an armchair, ostensibly reading Wuthering Heights for her English class, but her eyes kept straying to the scene unfolding across the room. Clara was directing the placement of a new Persian rug, her voice a symphony of polite but firm commands to the two delivery men. "A little to the left, please, gentlemen. It needs to align perfectly with the cornices. Yes, right there. Perfect." Her movements were fluid, her posture impeccable in a cream-colored silk blouse and tailored trousers. She was beauty in motion, a living, breathing work of art. And their mother, Eleanor, watched her with an expression of pure, unadulterated pride. "You have such an eye, darling," Eleanor said, her voice smooth as velvet. "Your father will be so pleased." Maya's pencil scratched against the page of her sketchbook. She wasn't drawing the living room or the new rug. She was sketching the delivery men's faces, capturing the subtle strain in their jaws and the forced patience in their eyes as they heaved the heavy carpet into position. She found the unvarnished reality of their expressions more fascinating than the sterile perfection of the room. "Maya, must you be so sedentary?" Eleanor's voice cut through her concentration. "Come, admire what your sister has accomplished. This room is finally complete." Maya slowly closed her book and stood up, feeling the familiar, uncomfortable weight of her mother's scrutiny. She walked over, her worn jeans and faded band t-shirt a stark contrast to her mother's and sister's chic attire. "It's nice," Maya offered, the word feeling wholly inadequate. The rug was undeniably beautiful, a tapestry of deep crimsons and blues that probably cost more than a year of her future college tuition. But it was just another expensive object in a house full of them. It didn't feel like home. It felt like a showroom. Clara turned, her smile bright and practiced. "Nice? Oh, May, it's exquisite. Ties the entire room together. Don't you feel the harmony?" Maya looked from the rug to her sister's face. There was a flicker of something in Clara's eyes, something too quick to name, before it was replaced by that familiar, dazzling warmth. It was a look Maya had been seeing more and more often since Clara's return, a shadow passing behind a sunlit window. "I guess," Maya mumbled, already retreating, "I have a lot of homework to do." Before she could escape, Eleanor's hand landed on her shoulder, her perfectly manicured nails a gentle but firm pressure. Your sister is a finalist for the Emerging Designer of the Year award. The reception is on Friday. We'll need to find you something appropriate to wear. Something less morose. Maya's shoulders tensed. These events were a specific kind of torture. She would be paraded around, introduced as Clara's younger sister, and expected to make small talk with people whose lives felt a million miles away from her own. She would smile until her cheeks ached and watch Clara bask in the adoration that seemed to follow her like a spotlight. The nightmare began subtly, not with a bang, but with a series of quiet, almost imperceptible shifts in the household atmosphere. It started with closed doors. Clara's bedroom, once a place Maya would wander into to borrow a sweater or ask for advice, was now almost always shut. When it was open, Clara would be on the phone, her voice low and hushed, and she would quickly end the call if Maya appeared. Then there were the late-night arrivals. The quiet click of the front door long after their parents were asleep. The creak of floorboards as Clara tiptoed up the stairs. Maya, a habitual night owl, would lie in her bed, listening, her heart thumping a nervous rhythm against her ribs. Sometimes, she would hear a car idling on the street for a few moments before pulling away. The physical changes were harder to ignore. Clara, who had always been slender, began to lose more weight. Dark circles, skillfully concealed with expensive makeup, began to bloom beneath her eyes. Her once radiant smile seemed to require more effort, the corners of her mouth trembling ever so slightly when she thought no one was watching. One evening, about a month after the new rug had been installed, Maya was in the kitchen, grabbing a late-night snack. She heard the front door open and close, followed by the soft, familiar footsteps. She expected Clara to walk past the kitchen and head straight upstairs as she usually did. But tonight, the footsteps paused. Maya peeked around the corner. Clara was standing in the dim light of the hallway, her back to Maya. She was leaning against the wall, her head bowed, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Maya's breath caught in her throat. In all her life, she had never seen her sister cry. Not when she'd fallen off her bike as a child, not when she'd been rejected from her first-choice university, not even at their grandmother's funeral. Clara Sterling did not cry. Maya took a hesitant step forward. "Clara?" she whispered. Her sister's head snapped up. In the dim light, Maya saw the raw, unfiltered anguish on her face before the mask of composure slammed back into place. Clara furiously wiped at her tears, her movements jerky and panicked. "Maya, you're still up." Her voice was a strained, brittle thing. "Are you okay?" The question felt stupid, obvious. "Of course, I'm fine." Clara forced a laugh that sounded more like a shard of glass. "Just a long day. This award. It's a lot of pressure." She straightened her clothes and smoothed her hair, the transformation from shattered to serene taking mere seconds. It was terrifying to watch. "You were crying," Maya pressed gently. "Don't be silly. I was just tired." My eyes were watering. The lie was so blatant, so insulting, that it hung in the air between them, thick and suffocating. Clara didn't even look at her as she said it. She was already moving towards the stairs, a ghost gliding through the house she had so perfectly decorated. "Good night, May," she said, her voice once again the smooth, melodic instrument Maya had always known. But the melody was off-key. Maya stood alone in the hallway for a long time, the silence of the house pressing in on her. The polished floors gleamed. The expensive art on the walls watched her with blank indifference. She was standing in the heart of her perfect home, but for the first time, she felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. It was the cold, creeping dread of a secret she couldn't name. The days leading up to the awards reception were fraught with a new, palpable tension. Clara was a whirlwind of activity, finalizing her presentation, fielding calls from journalists, and selecting her outfit with the precision of a surgeon. She was brilliant, dazzling, and more distant than ever. She moved through the house like a phantom, leaving behind a trail of expensive perfume and an unnerving silence. Maya tried to breach the wall between them several times. She'd knock on Clara's door, offering a cup of tea, only to be told, "I'm swamped. Maybe later." She tried to start a conversation at the dinner table, only to have Clara's phone buzz. Her attention immediately diverted to a text message that would either make her face tighten or her eyes go blank. Their parents, Richard and Eleanor, were willfully ignorant. They saw only their successful daughter on the cusp of greatness. They interpreted her weight loss as the result of stress and dedication, her irritability as a sign of her artistic temperament. They were so blinded by the light of her success that they couldn't see the darkness gathering at its edges. "She's a true sterling," Richard would boom, swirling the wine in his glass. "Ambitious, driven. She'll be running the company in 5 years." Eleanor would nod in agreement, her gaze fixed on Clara with an almost ravenous pride. "She just needs to remember to rest after this is all over. We'll take a trip, maybe to Tuscany." Maya would listen to these exchanges, a knot of anxiety tightening in her stomach. Did they not see the tremor in Clara's hands when she reached for the salt? Did they not hear the exhaustion that laced her every word? Or did they just choose not to? The night of the awards ceremony arrived, cloaked in the oppressive humidity of a late summer evening. Maya stood in front of her bedroom mirror, tugging at the navy blue dress her mother had bought for her. It was a perfectly nice dress, elegant and understated, but it felt like a costume. It wasn't her. Downstairs, the house was buzzing. Her father was on the phone, arranging their car service. Her mother was putting the finishing touches on her own immaculate ensemble. And Clara was a vision. She descended the staircase in a floor-length gown of emerald green silk that shimmered under the chandelier light. Her blonde hair was swept up in an elegant chignon, and diamonds glittered at her ears and throat. She looked like a movie star, radiant and untouchable. "Oh, darling," Eleanor breathed, her hands clasped to her chest. "You are breathtaking." Richard ended his call and turned, a broad smile spreading across his face. "That's my girl. You look like a winner already." Clara smiled, a slow, graceful curve of her lips. "Thank you, Daddy." Maya watched from the shadows of the hallway, feeling more like an intruder than ever. As her family gathered by the door, ready to leave for their night of triumph, Maya noticed Clara's purse sitting on the hall table. It was a small, beaded clutch, barely large enough for a phone and a lipstick. As Clara reached for it, her hand brushed against it, and it fell to the floor, spilling its contents across the polished wood. A lipstick rolled under the table. A compact skittered to a stop by the wall. A small, sleek silver phone lay face up, and next to it a small, clear plastic baggie containing a few white pills. Everything seemed to happen in slow motion. Eleanor gasped, a small, horrified sound. Richard's smile vanished, replaced by a thunderous frown. Maya's heart stopped. Clara, moving with a speed that was shocking, dropped to her knees. She swept the pills, the phone, the lipstick, and the compact back into the purse with frantic, trembling hands. She snapped the clutch shut and stood up, her face a pale, stark mask of terror. "Clumsy me," she said, her voice high and thin. No one spoke. The silence was deafening, a thick, viscous thing that filled the space between them. Richard stared at his eldest daughter, his eyes narrowed, a muscle twitching in his jaw. Eleanor looked as if she'd been struck, her hand fluttering to her throat. Maya looked at her sister, and in that moment, she saw everything. The late nights, the weight loss, the closed doors, the hushed phone calls, the secret tears in the hallway. It all clicked into place, forming a picture so ugly and terrifying that Maya wanted to scream. But the silence held. It was Richard who broke it, his voice a low, dangerous growl. "What were those?" Clara's laugh was a horrifying, brittle sound. "Vitamins. I've been so run down. My doctor said I needed a boost." It was the worst lie she had ever told. So flimsy, so transparent, it was an insult to their intelligence. Maya waited for the explosion, for the shouting, the questions, the anger, the concern. She waited for her parents to become parents, to see past the emerald gown and the diamond earrings and see their daughter, who was so clearly, so desperately in trouble. Instead, Eleanor took a deep breath, her posture straightening, her expression smoothing over into a familiar, placid mask. "Well, you must be careful, darling. We can't have you dropping things. The car is waiting." Richard's gaze remained locked on Clara for a moment longer, a silent, chilling exchange passing between them. Then, he too seemed to make a decision. He cleared his throat, straightened his tie, and turned towards the door. "Eleanor's right. We'll be late." And just like that, it was over. The moment was swept under the rug, just like the delivery men had done with the Persian carpet. Another uncomfortable truth was polished away to maintain the gleaming surface of their perfect family. As they walked out to the waiting car, Clara in the lead, her parents flanking her like royal guards, Maya felt a wave of nausea. They were walking into a celebration, a night that was supposed to be the pinnacle of her sister's success. But Maya knew they were walking into a lie. She trailed behind them, her navy blue dress feeling heavier than ever. She glanced back at the house, at the warm light spilling from the windows, at the illusion of a happy, perfect home. She finally understood. The nightmare wasn't just Clara's. The nightmare was the silence. It was the pretense, the denial, the gilded cage they had all helped to build. And as the car door shut, trapping them all inside, Maya realized the doors had been closed for a very, very long time. Chapter 2. The sound of silence. The awards ceremony was a blur of flashing cameras, polite applause, and the clinking of champagne glasses. Maya moved through the opulent ballroom of the downtown hotel like a ghost, an unnoticed satellite orbiting the blazing sun that was her sister. Clara, to her credit, played her part to perfection. She was luminous, charming, and articulate. She accepted compliments with practiced humility, her hands steady as she shook hands with judges and competitors, her smile never faltering. To anyone watching, Clara Sterling was the embodiment of success. But Maya saw the truth. She saw the frantic, searching quality in Clara's eyes as she scanned the crowd. She saw the way her sister's fingers nervously twisted the stem of her untouched champagne flute. She saw the fine sheen of sweat on her brow that even the professional makeup couldn't quite hide. Every smile, every laugh, every confident gesture was a performance, a desperate, high-wire act with no safety net. And the audience, their parents included, was giving her a standing ovation. Clara won. The announcement of her name was met with a thunderous roar of approval. Richard and Eleanor leaped to their feet, their faces alight with vicarious triumph. Maya clapped along with everyone else, the sound hollow and meaningless in her own ears. As Clara glided onto the stage to accept her award, a sleek crystal obelisk, she was the very picture of grace and gratitude. Her acceptance speech was flawless. She thanked her mentors, the judges, and, of course, her wonderfully supportive family. "To my parents," she said, her voice catching with just the right amount of emotion as she gazed at them, "who taught me that with hard work and dedication, any dream is possible. And to my little sister, Maya, who keeps me grounded and always reminds me of what's truly important." She smiled directly at Maya, and for a fleeting second, under the hot, bright stage lights, Maya saw a crack in the facade. It was a look of such profound desperation, such a desperate plea, that it stole the air from Maya's lungs. Said, "Help me. See me. Don't believe any of this." And then it was gone, replaced by the triumphant smile the crowd expected. The drive home was suffocating. The Crystal Award sat on the seat between Richard and Eleanor, a cold, hard symbol of the lie they were all now complicit in. Her parents chattered endlessly about the evening, dissecting every conversation, reliving the moment of victory. "Did you see the look on Henderson's face when they announced your name?" Richard chuckled. "He thought his firm was a shoo-in. And Mrs. Vanderbilt simply couldn't stop talking about your portfolio," Eleanor added. "She wants to commission you for their summer home in the Hamptons." Clara sat silently, staring out the window, her new trophy ignored. The streetlights painted fleeting stripes of light across her face, illuminating her pale, drawn features. When they arrived home, the pretense of celebration continued. Richard opened a bottle of vintage champagne, the pop of the cork echoing unnaturally loud in the quiet house. He poured 4 glasses, but only he and Eleanor drank. "A toast," Richard declared, raising his glass. "To Clara. To the future of Sterling Designs." "To Clara," Eleanor echoed, her eyes shining. Clara offered a weak smile and raised her glass before setting it back down on the coffee table, untouched. Maya watched her, her heart aching. The silence about what had happened in the hallway before they'd left was a living entity in the room. It coiled around the legs of the furniture, clung to the drapes, and settled heavily in the spaces between them. It was a poison, and they were all breathing it in. Later that night, Maya couldn't sleep. The image of those white pills on the polished floor was seared into her mind. She crept out of her room and down the hall to Clara's door. It was closed as usual. She pressed her ear against the cool wood, her breath held tight in her chest. She could hear movement inside, the soft rustle of fabric, the clink of glass. And then, a voice. Clara's voice, low and ragged. "I can't do this anymore," she was whispering. A pause. "No, you don't understand. It's not working. I need more." Maya's blood ran cold. Was she on the phone? Who was she talking to? Another long pause, filled only by the frantic thumping of Maya's own heart. "Friday," Clara said, her voice firmer now, laced with a desperate resolve. "Behind the old textile mill. The usual time. Just make sure you have it. I can't go through another week like this." The old textile mill. It was an abandoned, derelict building on the industrial outskirts of town. A place kids went to drink and spray paint graffiti on the crumbling brick walls. The usual time. This wasn't a new arrangement. Maya backed away from the door, a wave of dizziness washing over her. She stumbled back to her room, her mind racing. The pills, the hushed phone calls, the secret meetings. This was so much bigger, so much more dangerous than she had imagined. Her sister was tangled in something terrifying, and she was pulling herself deeper. The next few days were the longest of Maya's life. The family fell back into its rhythm of polite avoidance. The award was placed on the mantelpiece, a gleaming monument to their collective denial. Clara was either locked in her room or out of the house, her absences explained away with vague references to meetings and sourcing materials. Maya felt like she was living in a parallel universe. In one, her family was celebrating a prestigious achievement. In the other, her sister was spiraling into an abyss, and no one but Maya seemed to hear her screams. She tried to talk to her mother. She found Eleanor in the garden, meticulously pruning her prize-winning roses. "Mom," Maya began, her voice trembling slightly, "I'm worried about Clara." Eleanor didn't look up from her task. Snip. A dead blossom fell to the ground. "She's under a lot of stress. This award is a huge responsibility." "No, it's more than that. The other night, before the ceremony, what we saw." Snip. She explained what that was. "Vitamins." The word was clipped. Final. It was a clear warning. "Do not push this." "But it didn't look like vitamins," Maya insisted, her voice rising with a desperate frustration. "And she's been acting so strange. She's losing so much weight. She's never home." Eleanor finally straightened up and turned to face Maya, her gardening gloves stained with soil. Her expression was one of cool, measured disappointment. "Maya, your sister has just achieved something extraordinary. This is her moment. Do not ruin it with your melodrama. You have always been prone to exaggeration. Perhaps you're just jealous." The accusation struck Maya like a physical blow. Jealous? Was that what they thought? That her concern was born of envy? The injustice of it was so profound, it left her speechless. "Clara is fine," Eleanor said, her voice softening slightly, a placating, patronizing tone that Maya hated. "She's a grown woman. She can take care of herself. Now be a good sister and support her. Don't cause trouble." She turned back to her roses, the conversation officially over. Maya was dismissed. The wall was not just around Clara. It was around the entire family. A fortress of denial, and Maya was on the outside. Her father was even less approachable. Richard Sterling dealt with unpleasantness by ignoring it. He buried himself in his work, spending longer and longer hours at the office. When he was home, he spoke only of business, of market shares and profit margins. It was safe territory, a world of black and white, of profit and loss. It was a world where messy, complicated emotions and daughters with terrifying secrets didn't exist. Maya was utterly, terrifyingly alone. The burden of the secret was a physical weight, pressing down on her chest, making it hard to breathe. At school, she couldn't concentrate. The words in her textbooks blurred together. The voices of her teachers were a distant drone. Her friends' chatter about dates and parties felt trivial, like dispatches from another planet. She spent her nights online, her laptop a small rectangle of light in her dark room. She typed in search terms that made her hands shake. Prescription pill addiction signs, what to do if a family member is on drugs, local addiction support groups. The search results were a horror show. The articles described her sister with chilling accuracy. The secrecy, the mood swings, the weight loss, the defensiveness, the social withdrawal. They also spoke of the apathetic families, the enablers, the parents who chose to look away because the truth was too painful, too shameful. The articles described her parents. Thursday night, the night before the meeting at the textile mill, Maya decided she couldn't be a passive observer any longer. The silence was going to kill her sister, and Maya couldn't let that happen. She waited until she was sure her parents were asleep. The house was still, wrapped in its usual shroud of nocturnal quiet. She slipped out of her room and crept to Clara's door. For once, it was slightly ajar. Peeking through the crack, she saw Clara asleep in her bed. Her face, in the soft moonlight filtering through the window, looked young and heartbreakingly vulnerable. The mask was gone. This was the sister Maya remembered from their childhood, the one who had taught her how to ride a bike and helped her with her math homework. Strewn across her desk, illuminated by the glow of her laptop, were sketches for a new project. They were brilliant, innovative, and full of the talent that everyone praised. But next to the laptop was an empty glass and an orange prescription bottle. With her heart pounding, Maya pushed the door open and tiptoed inside. The air was stale and heavy. She crept over to the desk. The bottle's label was facing her. Oxycodone, prescribed to a name she didn't recognize. Her hands shaking, Maya picked up the bottle. It was empty. She gently opened the top drawer of the desk. Inside, nestled amongst pens and paper clips, were two more empty bottles. Different names, same drug. This was no longer a suspicion. This was a fact. Cold, hard, terrifying fact. She had to do something. She couldn't go to her parents. They had already shown her they were not an option. She had to confront Clara herself. The next day, Friday, passed in a haze of dread. Maya went through the motions of her school day, the minutes ticking by like a bomb counting down. She knew the usual time would be after dark. She formulated a plan, a desperate, half-baked idea that was probably stupid and definitely dangerous. That evening, after a dinner eaten in near total silence, Clara stood up from the table. "I'm going out for a bit," she announced to no one in particular. "Going to see a friend." "Don't be too late, darling," Eleanor said, not looking up from her magazine. Maya's eyes met Clara's across the room. She tried to convey a message with her gaze. A plea. "Don't go. Talk to me." Clara's expression was unreadable. She just gave a small, tight nod and walked out, her car keys jingling softly in her hand. Maya waited for 10 minutes, her insides churning. Then she stood up. "I'm going to the library to study," she lied, grabbing her backpack. Her parents barely registered her departure. She didn't go to the library. She got on her bike and started pedaling, her legs pumping with a frantic, desperate energy. She rode through the familiar, tree-lined streets of her neighborhood, past the warm, glowing windows of other families living their normal lives. Then she crossed the highway, heading towards the industrial part of town. The air grew colder, smelling of diesel and decay. The neat suburban houses gave way to warehouses and chain-link fences. The old textile mill loomed in the distance, a skeletal silhouette against the bruised purple of the twilight sky. It was a place of shadows and secrets, and her sister was heading right for its heart. Maya hid her bike in a thicket of overgrown bushes and crept towards the back of the mill. She found a spot behind a rusted-out dumpster, her heart hammering against her ribs so hard she was sure it was audible. The place was even more menacing up close. Broken windows stared out like vacant eyes. Graffiti snaked across the brickwork like angry veins. She didn't have to wait long. Clara's sleek, expensive sedan pulled up, its headlights cutting through the gloom before she killed the engine. A few moments later, another car, a beat-up, noisy muscle car, rumbled to a stop beside it. A man got out of the driver's side. He was tall and thin, with a swaggering walk and a hooded sweatshirt that obscured his face. Maya shrank further behind the dumpster. Clara got out of her car. Even here, in this grimy, forgotten place, she looked out of place in her cashmere sweater and designer jeans. "You have it." Clara's voice was sharp, stripped of its usual melodic grace. It was the voice of a raw nerve. "Always for my favorite client," the man drawled. He looked around, his movements furtive. "You got the money?" Clara held out an envelope. The man snatched it, quickly counting the contents before stuffing it into his pocket. He then reached into his own pocket and pulled out another small plastic baggie. The exchange was quick, sordid, and clinical. This was business. "This isn't enough," Clara said, her voice shaking with a mixture of anger and desperation. "This will barely last me through the weekend. The Vanderbilt project. The pressure is insane. I need more. Supply is tight," the man said, his voice flat. "And my price is going up next week. You want more, you bring more cash. I can't just keep getting cash." Clara's voice cracked. "My parents. They're starting to notice." "Not my problem," the man shrugged. He started to turn away. "Wait." Clara's voice was a desperate cry. "Please. I can get you more. Just give me an advance. I'm good for it." The man laughed, a harsh, ugly sound that echoed in the derelict space. "That's not how this works, sweetheart. You know the rules." He got back in his car, the engine roaring to life. As the headlights flashed on, they illuminated Clara's face. She was no longer the award-winning designer, the perfect daughter, the poised and confident woman. In the harsh, unforgiving light, she was just a terrified, desperate addict. Her face was a mask of pure despair, her body trembling. As the dealer's car sped away, leaving Clara alone in the darkness, Maya knew she could not stay hidden any longer. The silence had to be broken. Not tomorrow, not next week. Now, taking a deep, shuddering breath, she stepped out from behind the dumpster. "Clara?" The sound of her own voice was a shock. Clara spun around, her eyes wide with panic and fear, like a cornered animal. In her hand, she clutched the small baggie of pills, her lifeline, her poison. The two sisters stood there, separated by a few feet of cracked, oil-stained asphalt, but with a chasm of secrets and lies stretching between them. The silent nightmare was finally out in the open, and the gilded cage had just been broken. Chapter 3. The wreckage of truth. The moment hung between them, fragile and explosive. The dim, desolate landscape of the abandoned mill was a fitting stage for the unraveling of their family's most protected secret. Clara stared at Maya, her face a canvas of warring emotions. Shock, terror, shame, and a flicker of something that looked devastatingly like relief. "Maya, what are you doing here?" Clara's voice was a hoarse whisper. Her hand, clutching the baggie of pills, instinctively moved behind her back, a futile gesture of concealment. "I followed you," Maya said, her own voice steadier than she felt. "I heard you on the phone the other night. I know, Clara." The three words, "I know, Clara," seemed to drain the last bit of fight from her sister. Clara's shoulders slumped in defeat. The carefully constructed mask of perfection didn't just crack. It shattered, falling away to reveal the raw, terrified woman beneath. A sob, thick and ragged, tore from her throat, and she sank to her knees on the cold, unforgiving asphalt. Maya rushed forward, her own fear momentarily forgotten, and knelt in front of her sister. The stench of decay and neglect from the old mill filled the air, a stark contrast to the lemon polish and roses of their home. "How long?" Maya asked softly, her hand hovering over Clara's shaking back. "A year," Clara confessed between sobs, the word muffled by her hands. "It started after I came home. The pressure. Dad expecting me to be the next him, Mom expecting me to be perfect. The clients, the deadlines. I was so anxious I couldn't sleep. I couldn't function." She looked up, her face streaked with tears and mascara. "A friend from grad school gave me one. Just one. Said it would help me relax, help me focus. And it did. For the first time in months I felt quiet. The noise in my head just stopped. The story tumbled out of her, a torrent of confession held back for too long. One pill became two. The prescription from a shady online doctor ran out. The friend introduced her to the dealer. The need grew, becoming a ravenous hunger that consumed everything. Her money, her health, her soul. "I wanted to stop," she whispered, her gaze fixed on the ground. "I tried, but the withdrawal. It's a pain you can't imagine. And the fear. I thought if I stopped, I'd fail. I'd lose the award. I'd disappoint everyone. I'd lose everything. Being perfect was the only thing I knew how to be, and I couldn't even do that without this." She gestured with her head to the hand hidden behind her back. Maya's heart broke for her. All this time, while Maya had been resenting her sister's seemingly effortless perfection, Clara had been trapped in a private hell, crushed under the weight of the very expectations that made her seem so strong. "You're not going to lose everything," Maya said, her voice firm with a conviction she didn't know she possessed. She reached out and gently took Clara's hand, the one holding the pills. Clara's fingers were icy cold. "You're not going to lose me." Maya carefully pried the small baggie from her sister's grasp. Clara resisted for a second, a reflexive, panicked tightening of her fingers, before she let it go. The surrender was absolute. Maya stood up, walked to a nearby storm drain, and dropped the pills inside. They disappeared into the darkness with a faint, plastic rustle. It was a small act, but it felt monumental. "What do we do now?" Clara asked, her voice small and lost. "We go home," Maya said, pulling her sister to her feet. "And we tell them the truth." The drive back to the pristine prison of their home was silent, but it was a different kind of silence. It wasn't the heavy, suffocating silence of denial, but the quiet, trembling anticipation of a storm about to break. They walked in the front door together. Richard and Eleanor were in the living room, bathed in the soft glow of the lamps, reading. They looked up, their expressions of mild annoyance at the interruption quickly turning to alarm at the sight of their daughters. Clara was a wreck. Her eyes were red and swollen. Her expensive sweater was smudged with dirt from the ground, and she was leaning on Maya for support. "Good heavens, Clara, what happened to you?" Eleanor asked, rising from her chair. This was it, the moment of truth. "Mom, Dad," Maya began, her voice clear and strong. "We need to talk. All of us." She led Clara to the sofa, settling her onto the plush cushions. The crystal award on the mantelpiece seemed to mock them from its perch. And then, with Maya sitting beside her, holding her hand, Clara told them everything. She stripped away the lies, the excuses, and the pretense, layer by painful layer. She told them about the anxiety, the first pill, the dealer, the empty bank accounts, the lies. She laid the wreckage of her secret life at her parents' feet. Maya watched her parents as the story unfolded. Eleanor's face went pale, her hand flying to her mouth in horror. She looked as though the perfectly curated world she had built was crumbling around her. Richard's face, however, hardened. The initial shock gave way to a cold, simmering fury. The muscle in his jaw twitched violently. When Clara finished, her voice trailing off into a raw, exhausted whisper, the room was plunged back into silence. But this time it was a volatile, dangerous quiet. It was Richard who spoke first, his voice low and seething with a rage that was terrifying to behold. "How could you?" he growled, his words precise and cutting. "How could you be so stupid, so reckless?" Everything we've given you, the education, the opportunities, and you throw it all away for this filth. He wasn't looking at a daughter in pain. He was looking at a failed investment, tarnished asset. "Richard, please," Eleanor whispered, her eyes wide with fear. "Don't, Richard. Please me, Eleanor," he roared, finally erupting. He began to pace the expensive Persian rug, his movements agitated and leonine. "Do you have any idea what this could do to us? To the business? The scandal? Our reputation would be destroyed. All my work, all our work, ruined by her weakness." The cruelty of his words was breathtaking. He hadn't asked if she was okay. He hadn't asked how they could help. He had only calculated the potential damage to his name, his company. "This is not about the business," Maya shouted, jumping to her feet. She couldn't stay silent any longer. "This is about your daughter, who is sick and who needs help. Did you hear anything she just said? She was drowning, and you were too busy planning her victory parade to notice. Don't you dare use that tone with me, young lady," Richard snarled, turning his fury on her. "This doesn't concern you. It concerns me because I'm the only one who seems to care that my sister is falling apart." Maya's voice broke with emotion. "You want to talk about pressure? You're the ones who created it. The perfect Sterling daughter had to be perfect, no matter what. She couldn't be sad, or scared, or overwhelmed. She could only be a winner. And this," Maya gestured around the flawlessly decorated room, "this is the price of that perfection." A choked sob came from the sofa. "He's right," Clara whispered, her voice filled with a self-loathing that was agonizing to hear. "I'm a disgrace. I've ruined everything." No, Eleanor's voice cut through the room. It was quiet, but it held a new, steely resolve. She had been sitting, frozen, but now she stood up and walked over to the sofa. She looked at Richard, and for the first time, Maya saw not a society wife, but a mother lioness, her eyes blazing with a protective fire. "You are wrong, Richard," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "This is not about the business, and it is not about your reputation. This is about our child." She knelt in front of Clara, taking her daughter's face in her hands. "And you," she said, her voice softening, "you are not a disgrace. You are my daughter and you are ill, and we will get you help. We will fix this. As a family." The shift in her was profound. In that moment, Eleanor Sterling finally chose her daughter over the illusion she had worked so hard to maintain. She shed the skin of the perfect hostess and became, simply, a mother. Richard stood, momentarily stunned into silence by his wife's defiance. He looked from Eleanor to Clara, to the tear-streaked face of Maya. He saw the united front they presented, a wall of feminine solidarity he could not breach. His rage seemed to deflate, replaced by a weary, bewildered confusion. He ran a hand through his hair, looking around the room as if seeing it for the first time. He saw the award, the expensive furniture, the symbols of his success, and for the first time they seemed to offer him no comfort. They were just things, cold, empty things. The next few days were a blur. The carefully ordered world of the Sterling family was dismantled. The first phone call was not to a client or a business associate, but to a rehabilitation center. Eleanor handled the arrangements with a quiet, fierce efficiency. The secret was out, but only within the four walls of their house. To the outside world, it was announced that Clara was taking a much-needed medical leave for exhaustion. The night before Clara was due to leave, Maya found her in her room, packing a small bag. The room was different now. The award had been taken down from the mantelpiece. The door was wide open. "Hey!" Maya said softly from the doorway. Clara turned, offering a small, fragile smile. "Hey, are you scared?" Maya asked. "Terrified," Clara admitted. "But I'm not alone anymore. That makes a difference." She walked over and pulled Maya into a hug, a real hug, not the stiff, polite embraces of their past. "You saved my life, you know. You would have done the same for me," Maya whispered into her sister's shoulder. And for the first time, she knew it was true. The morning Clara left, The atmosphere was somber but not hopeless. Eleanor hugged her daughter for a long time, whispering words of love and encouragement. When it was Richard's turn, he hesitated. He looked awkward and lost, stripped of his usual blustering authority. He began, his voice rough. I'm sorry, Clara, for not seeing. It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was a start. It was a crack in the armor, a glimmer of the father he had once been. After they had gone, Maya stood in the now quiet house. It looked the same, the polished floors, the perfect furniture, but it felt entirely different. The suffocating silence had been replaced by the clean, crisp air of truth. It was messy and painful, but it was real. She walked over to the mantelpiece, to the empty space where the award had been. Her reflection stared back at her from the polished marble. She didn't see an unfinished sketch anymore. She saw a girl who had found her voice. The house was no longer a gilded cage. It was just a house, and for the first time it felt like a homey, a broken, healing home where the doors were finally open. The nightmare was over, and in its place was the quiet, difficult, and hopeful dawn of a new day.